Hearts and Hands by O. Henry. Amidst the bustling activity at Denver Station, passengers swarmed into the coaches of the eastbound B&M Express. In one coach, a striking young woman sat regally, her attire exuding refinement and her surroundings exuding opulence befitting a seasoned traveler. Among the newcomers were two men, one of handsome presence with a bold, frank countenance and manner, the other a ruffled, glum-faced person, heavily built and roughly dressed. The two were bound together by gleaming handcuffs. As they made their way down the aisle, the only available seat faced the elegant young woman. Seating themselves before her, the linked pair drew her attention. At first, her gaze flickered disinterestedly over them, but then a warm smile graced her features and a delicate blush adorned her cheeks as she extended a gloved hand. "Well, Mr. Easton," she began, her voice mellifluous and poised. "If you'll permit me to initiate the conversation, it seems I must. Do you never recognize old acquaintances when you encounter them in the West?" The younger man, startled by her voice, momentarily struggled with embarrassment before regaining his composure and clasping her hand with a smile. "It's Miss Fairchild," he acknowledged warmly. "Please excuse my other hand. It's currently indisposed." He gestured lightly to his right hand, restrained by a shining bracelet tethered to his companion's left. The joy in the young woman's eyes quickly turned to bewilderment and dismay. As Mr. Easton prepared to speak, his companion interjected, observing the young woman's reaction with keen, shrewd eyes. "Forgive my interruption, miss, but it seems you're acquainted with our marshal here," he remarked. "If you would be so kind as to put in a good word for me when we reach our destination, it would greatly ease my circumstances. The marshal is escorting me to Leavenworth Prison. I'm facing 7 years for counterfeiting." "Oh!" exclaimed the young woman, her color returning as she comprehended the situation. "So, you're a marshal." "My dear Miss Fairchild," Mr. Easton replied calmly, "circumstances led me to this role. Money has a tendency to vanish, and as you know, maintaining appearances in Washington requires substantial funds. I saw an opportunity in the West, albeit a less prestigious one than an ambassadorship." "The ambassador," the young woman said warmly, "no longer pays visits. And now you've become one of those daring Western figures, facing danger and adventure. It's quite a departure from Washington. You've been missed by the old crowd." Fascinated, the young woman's gaze returned to the glimmering handcuffs. "Don't fret about them, miss," the other man reassured her. "Marshals always secure their prisoners to prevent escape. Mr. Easton is well versed in his duties." "Will we see you in Washington again soon?" inquired the young woman. "Not any time soon, I believe," replied Mr. Easton. "My days of courtly frivolity are behind me." Miss Fairchild looked out the window, her thoughts as distant as the fading landscape. "I've grown to love the West. The freedom here is unmatched in the East. It's not wealth we seek, but understanding and adventure." Mr. Easton rose, the clinking of the handcuffs a reminder of the path he chose. "Then we must part ways here, dear Miss Fairchild. Duty calls me onward." "It's too bad you are not going east," Miss Fairchild remarked, her voice tinged with disappointment as she adjusted her elegant attire. "But you must go on to Leavenworth, I suppose?" "Yes," replied Mr. Easton with a slight nod. "I must go on to Leavenworth." As the two men made their way down the aisle, a pair of nearby passengers who had been eavesdropping on the conversation began to murmur among themselves. The curiosity and confusion that had been building throughout the interaction finally found voice in their whispered exchange. "That marshal's a good sort of chap. Some of these Western fellows are all right," one passenger mused, watching Mr. Easton's retreating figure. "Pretty young to hold an office like that, isn't he?" the other replied, raising an eyebrow in curiosity. Suddenly, a realization dawned, and the first speaker's eyes widened in surprise. "Young! Why, oh, didn't you catch on? Say, did you ever know an officer to handcuff a prisoner to his right hand?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implication. Their revelation rippled through the air as they and other listeners grasped the true dynamics of the situation. Mr. Easton, who had been masquerading as a marshal, was in fact the prisoner, and the glum-faced man, previously perceived as a sullen escort, was the real marshal. The twist in their roles, now clear, shifted the perspective of their earlier interaction, casting Mr. Easton's charming demeanor and the other man's grim appearance in a new light. This twist redefined the narrative, leaving the passengers and the readers with a striking example of appearances being deceiving. The end.